What's up, everybody? It's Gerald Mr. BPOZ Mayes back at you with another episode of the Good Dads Podcast. And I cannot wait to share this guest with you. His name is Benjamin Suyematsu, a personal friend of mine that I've known for a long time. He works in the health and wellness industry, and he has two young sons, 7 and 4, and married for 5 or 6 years. So he's fairly new to the dad game. Real close friend of mine, real inspirational dude, and I'm happy to call him my friend. If you're new to the show, then I am a father of four, married for 16 years. My oldest son is 22, off in college. My daughter is 20, off in college. My 18-year-old is actually leaving to college. Well, by the time you hear this, have already left from college, and I'll be on my way back from dropping her off in Kansas. So I am on a mission to write the greatest book for fathers of all time. And a part of that journey is this podcast. This is where we talk to dads and we hone in on the things that have made them great in their fatherhood journey. And I cannot wait to share one of my closest friends with you, Benjamin Suyematsu. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? This is Gerald Mr. BPOZ Mayes here, and I am joined by one of my closest friends, actually. Benjamin Suyematsu, call him Benjamin, not Ben. Only I get to do that. He hasn't correct me, but his dad did let me know that he doesn't like it. However, he has never actually corrected me. That's how I know that he's my friend. So Ben, what's up, man?
How's it going? Thanks for having me today.
Yeah,
You
man.
call me whatever
Thanks
you
for
want. Just
jumping on such a short notice. Been
yeah,
we've been talking back and forth about getting you on this show for weeks. Even had some ideas a few years ago about starting our own, which I 100% am going to do. So be on the lookout, everybody, for a podcast featuring my good friend Beer and Balls. And in the logo, there's a nice little Willie in the middle between us, Ben and Jerry and a Willie with two sets of nuts. These nuts. But we're gonna talk sports on that one, and we're also gonna talk about life, right? So, Benjamin, Ben, tell me, tell me your story. Like, you're married, father. Like, tell me that origin story, because you're a young guy.
yeah. Thanks. Little young, I guess. Yeah, I got one saying "Dad" right now up the stairs. Raiden, I'm on a call, but yeah. So I actually met Miranda, my beautiful wife, while I was away at college. Funny, we grew up in neighboring towns. Never met each other until I was home for Christmas one summer, and moment I met her, I knew it sounds cliche, it sounds kind of cheesy, but we met and I knew she was who I was going to marry.
Mm,
Fast forward a little bit, moved to Laramie with me to finish my last semester of college, which was a giant move for her. Obviously, showed her commitment to me. She never left her hometown, never left her family. So, big commitment on her part, and relationship really just flourished from there. In hindsight, and we might talk about this a little bit more as this progresses, but in hindsight, I look back at being 21, 22. I got married at 23. Brandon, I got married at 23. She was actually 24. I like to throw that in her face sometimes. Um, but it just seems so young to start a life with somebody with that kind of commitment. But it was the right person to do it with. And same thing, we had our first son, Adonis. We were both 25 at the time, and same thing. Not quite your story and being so young, being a dad, but in hindsight, 25 just seems so young to make that commitment to
right,
taking on such a big responsibility. I don't think you have the perspective of really what that entails until you do become a father. And Raiden came along. I was 28 at the time. A lot more life experience. Obviously, the dad experience. Second one is a little bit easier in terms of navigating some of the
right,
challenges that come with that. I think so. That's kind of nutshell, small intro into my family and how we ended up here.
right. And then you said you came home from college. What college did you attend?
University of Wyoming, go Pokes.
Go Pokes. That's what you said.
That's right.
Yeah, we went up there one time for a football game. It was a great experience. I know you had mentioned in your brief intro that the second kid is easier. Like, why do you think that? Because I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I think for me, if I share a little bit first, is I think there's a little bit that you kind of expect, but then there's also a lot of understanding that whatever I thought the worst was with the first one probably is not going to happen. So I could put my guard down a little bit more and allow my youngest one or my younger ones to kind of skirt the limits a little bit further than my older one, right? Like if you get into a conversation with, between my youngest son and my oldest son, like they'll tell you two totally different experiences and two totally different men who raised them essentially, right? Like the one that raised my oldest son was a hard nosed, I was fresh out of the military, but this guy that's raising little girl, oh, he kind of soft, man. Like I don't know, like he's a little more lenient. So what do you think has been the difference between? Is it personality? Is it you? Is it the family structure? What do you think the difference is?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I was just having this conversation with a colleague of mine, and if you remember the Love's commercials, the Love's diapers commercials, they used to do one where it was like first kid and drop a pacifier and it's disinfect, make sure it's clean before you give it back to the baby. Second one picks it up off the ground, wipes it off, gives it back to the second kid.
Right.
And I think part of that is a combination of what you say, right? It's these are two entirely different people, despite being raised in similar ways. They're their own people and they have their own personalities. And it seems to be a common theme, at least certainly true for my house and similar stories from other people that I talk to. The second one is the wild one. And
Right.
it always makes me wonder, right? Is that the more laid back approach to parenting, where this first one you're structured, you're trying to do things or you're trying to do everything perfectly because you don't want to screw something up, and then the second one comes along and you go, things are going to happen, they're going to fall, they're going to scrape themselves, and things are going
Yep.
to be okay though. And
Exactly.
so I think it's a combo, right? I think it's first of all you're dealing with two different people, and as little as they may be and as new as to the world as they may be, they're still people and they're different, they have their own personalities.
Right.
And then I think that paired with what a lot of us, not all of us, but probably what a lot of us do in a more laid back approach, a softer approach, or just not such a high strung, stressed approach to the second one because you do have an idea of what you're doing. I think those things paired are really what comes from that.
Right. I agree with that. It's funny that you said that too, because like I remember my older kids, like we even the way they dressed, like they were buttoned up, like everything was new. Jordans. I know you're not a big shoe guy, but you know I am. Jordans, everything. By the time little girl came along, he wore socks and a onesie for like 2 years straight. Until I'm like, you're not getting shoes until you can walk. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like there's no point in putting $70 Jordan ones on your feet and they're just kicking like this in the car seat. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yep.
Gerald wore socks until he was one. So it's like on that side, it's like I'm super lenient, but like he is a lot more expressive than say my oldest son. And you know them, so you have a relationship with my oldest son because you guys are only like 8 years apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you and my son are about the same distance and age as me and you are.
Yeah. That'd be pretty
Close,
close.
right? Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, he's 22 years old. So, and I'm only 40. So, and you're what
Yep.
30, 31 now?
32.
32.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So I find that funny though. Like the combination of all of that has probably given little Gerald a different view of his world, right? To where I
Yeah.
don't think, and I also don't think any one of them are wrong or incorrect, right? Like my oldest son, I would literally give him the keys to everything and let him run my entire life, right? My youngest son, hell to the no,
No.
right? Hell to
Yeah.
the no.
Yep.
I would not. I don't like. It's not even that I don't trust him. It's like I don't know if is going to put that much attention because he's still searching out all of the nooks and crevices of the world right now, to where my son is just like, I'm just trying to find my lane and drive
Yep.
it, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Adonis would take care of everything. Raiden would crash us into a building and go, whoops.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what about marriage? Because I know that one thing that I can tell about your life and your family is the relationship that you and your wife have, right? I'm not naive to say that you guys don't argue or you don't disagree, but what do you believe the role is of your spouse in regards to you being a great father?
I think more than anything, it's the support and the the teamwork that we have, right? It's um, Miranda is my best friend, and oftentimes I remind my kids of that too, right? If they're being disrespectful to her, I don't let other people disrespect my best friend. I'm not going to let you do that either. And
Absolutely.
that teamwork is back and forth, right? So um, there was an instance with Adonis that we can go into if we need to, but he got very, very upset with me. I thought an "I hate you" was coming.
Ooh,
Um, it turned out to be something a little worse than that, but she stood up for me, right? And I think
right.
that's the teamwork piece. Is I try to make sure that I'm cognizant that I'm setting a good example for them, for how they're supposed to treat their partners in the future. And um, kids are always watching, as well as I do. They pick up on habits, they pick up on practices, and so I try to be cognizant in my own approach to my relationship with her. One, out of respect for her, I love her to death, and I respect the woman and the mom and the wife that she is, and I want to make sure that that's known to my children. That's how you're supposed to treat somebody, and I think
Oh,
that's it's mutual from her side. To go back into a little bit of history, both Miranda and I came from some relationships that we weren't
hold on,
treated the
hold on.
best.
Before you transition, I gotta ask, what did he say?
So I took his tablet away, and he was actually Raiden's tablet. It wasn't his,
Hmm.
and I didn't know that. And so I don't remember exactly what he did, but I told him that if he continued to act that way, I was going to put it in the trash. And so he said, "Go ahead, put it in the trash." And I said, "If you want this in the trash, you put it in there, and then I'm going to take this out, put it in the big trash for the garbage man to take away." Again, him thinking that it was, or me thinking it was Raiden, sorry, his, and it actually being Raiden's. Donis had no problem putting it in there.
Got you.
So I took his and I put his in the big trash outside once I found out. And he was 4 at the time. And you could just see all the anger, and he didn't know how to express it appropriately, right? He's 4, he doesn't know how to do that. And he's saying whatever he thinks he can to get to me. And he said, "I'm gonna stab you in the eye so that you die, and then I can get a better dad."
Oh
and
shit.
and that's where I thought that the "I hate you" was coming, and so it kind of took me off guard, right? Fortunately, at that point, I think I'd had enough practice in not being so reactive to things that
Right,
he did.
right.
Right, he's 4. I don't need to react in any specific way. I can take my time and calm down. Generally, need to calm down in that situation, but I had a hard time not laughing because I wasn't expecting that one to come out of his mouth.
That's that's pretty extensive. I'm going to
Yeah.
stab you in the eye so that I can get a better dad.
Yep.
That's clever though. I'm not gonna lie. That's
Yeah, I
clever.
opened the door for him and told him he could go find a better dad if he wanted to,
Yeah, for
and
real.
he didn't take me up on that one.
Yeah, I think I've done that a couple times too. I've opened the door. Hey, you can go if you don't like my rules.
Yep.
You can find whatever rules that you want to out there.
Right.
Nothing is free. Nothing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like you can go out there and find it if you think it's better out there. Go ahead. I'll allow it. You know what I mean? That's
Yep.
funny.
Yep.
Go ahead though. Continue this story. I had to know what Adonna said to you. That was
Yeah.
worse than
No.
I hate you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The I hate you might have hit me more in the heart, but yeah, I don't think I've ever been threatened to be stabbed in the eye
Right.
so that I die. So I don't
I think the
really remember
worst
what I
thing
was.
to be told. This is just me, my own personal opinion, I guess. The worst thing to be told by my kid, I guess, is that I don't care about them. That to me It's way worse than being told that they hate me or they don't like something that I'm choosing to do, because I understand what comes along with making those decisions. But I get caught up sometimes in the fact that I know and I believe that I'm doing the very best that I can for my kids, and they don't understand like just the depths to which it takes to be a good father. And I'm not no slack to any moms out there, but to be a good father is to not be an old father, right? It's not to
Sure.
be an old style father. And I know your father, pretty well as well. And like that's a different situation and scenario than I came up with. Like my dad was a little bit distant, to say to speak. I love him and he loved me back, and we talk and we communicate, but he was distant, to say to say the least, right? So, knowing that I'm working up against that all the time, to hear my kids say something like I don't care about them or I don't love them or I'm not whatever, I think that hurts the worst. Is there anything that your kids have said to you that was like way worse than like something that was kind of aimed at trying to get under your skin?
Yeah, and this it takes a little bit of rationalization, right? But anytime I hear you don't play with me, that bothers me because one of my big things is I put it in the entry questionnaire, but being present and making sure that I'm present for things, and it can be something as simple as Adonis asking me to come over and watch a video that he thinks is funny or that he is enjoying. But being told that I don't play with you, and there are days where I've played with him all day, and I know in my heart I've done my part. Um, but that still bothers me, right? Because I don't want
Right.
them to think that that I'm not present, or that I don't want them around, or that I don't want to be around them. So that always bothers me, and sometimes it's true, right? I didn't play with you today. You're right. I need to do better. There are other days where I go, there's no way that that's true. I paid attention to you literally all day long,
Right.
no matter what the circumstance, whether it's true or not. It still bothers me.
Right. Is that like rooted in anything? Like how was your relationship with your dad?
He played with me a lot, and if you ask my parents, it almost drove my mom crazy because my parents were divorced. For those that don't know, but I go to my dad's and I get all this not attention. It's not that my mom didn't give me attention, but I would get all of this playtime with my dad. He'd play baseball with me, play Power Rangers with me, Ninja Turtles, whatever it was, and again, this is not to say that my mom did not do the same. You can ask her. She had to be the pink Power Ranger. She had to be one of the Ninja Turtles. But it was a different, it was just a different household. And so by the time I got back to my mom's, my expectation, having been at my dad's, was that we're going to play all these games together. And my mom would, I think it drove her crazy because it just wasn't the same level of playfulness, I guess you could say.
And are you and your dad close now? I had to fix something up on the thing, so that's why I had to disappear from the chat.
You're
But
good.
how are you and your dad close now?
Yeah, yeah. I think my dad and I have always had a really good relationship, and it started out of the typical authority figure. I never wanted to disappoint my dad. That was my biggest goal, was to not disappoint my dad. And if I did, God, it was the end of the world for me. I would beat myself up over it. And so it started obviously as the authority figure, and I have a lot of respect for my dad. And over the years, that's transitioned more into a friendship. We talk a lot of sports, um, play golf together whenever we can. He's a great grandfather as well. He's really present. Same thing though, and I can understand from my mom's perspective now. My kids come back from his house and they played with Papa all day, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to play this anymore.
Right, right, right. Like he's like super papa, right? Like it's just them two. He doesn't have any other responsibilities. It's just you, your family, your kids. He's recently retired, so like, and he moved to Vegas
Yep,
specifically for that reason, right?
yep, yep.
Yeah, so
He's
that's
all in on him.
that's awesome. What have you learned from your father that you have implemented into how you father your children?
Being present, again, I think that's probably the biggest thing. And early in my childhood, my dad was a high school baseball and football coach, and so there were a lot of little league games that he wasn't around for because he was coaching his own team. And it never really bothered me. I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. I loved being around high school athletics as a kid growing up, and so there was a major privilege and major opportunity there for me to, as a kid and as a, I guess, teen and high schooler, I had an advantage in athletics because I was privileged to be able to be around that all the time. So I never really saw that as a downfall. But even during those times, anything outside of his own work or coaching commitments, he was present. And so I think that's a big piece. He's obviously present now. He's been present throughout my life, and so that's a big piece from him. There are also things that I think as new research comes out and we learn more things about how to be a parent, not just a father, but being a parent. There are things that I try to do differently, and that's no fault to my dad, but
Right.
I remember specifically in times where I did do something wrong, I was in trouble or I disappointed him. I'd get the silent treatment, and I hated that. I
Right.
hated him not talking to me. And new research now points to that being detrimental. How detrimental? I don't know. I think I turned out just fine, but um, I try not to do that to my children. I try to keep an open line of communication. I just had a situation with Adonis just last week where he tried to give me the silent treatment, and I kind of thought in my head, if this was my dad, he'd be giving it right back.
Right. Right.
And I read some stuff on the internet, and I think some of that you can only take a little bit for what it's worth. But I did have one takeaway from an article I read, and I approached him with, "It's okay if you don't want to talk to me." And I've always had this talk with Adonis. Not so much Raiden; he's not quite old enough to get this, but I try to make sure that they know it's okay to have feelings. And I tell Adonis, "You can be mad at me. That's okay. Can't disrespect me, but you can be mad at me." And
Right.
so with this specific one, it was, if you don't want to talk to me, that's okay. But we're going to talk about this. And when you're ready, I'm ready to talk to you about it.
I like that. See, I always, for me personally, like, and obviously, like I've said this before, the man who raised Dominic is a lot different than the man who is raising Gerald still for the next 3 years until he goes on to his next stop. I have four. And my middle child, my third child, is going to college this weekend. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of growth, a lot of change, a lot of everything that has happened to me, even in my marriage, right? And you've seen me in some of the great places as well as some of the places where I would prefer to not have to discuss ever again in my life, right? But like I find it hard sometimes to balance with especially with little drill, right? How much leniency and this whole like I want him to, find himself, but also like I want you to pay attention and do what I ask you to do. And the discipline that comes along with that. Like 22-year-old Drew, cuz I know you said earlier that you and Miranda y'all had your first kid at 25, married at what age? 22?
23.
Yeah, 23. That is my story is that in reverse. By the time I was 21, I had three kids.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? 22. I had three kids. Well, I had two kids and one on the way. That's me meeting my wife now. I had a daughter at the time. She had a son at the time. We start messing around. She gets pregnant within like 6 months of us dating. So we now have basically three kids. And then Gerald comes like literally we find out that she's pregnant 3 months after we got married. So when I got married to Julia, we took the kids with us. We had three kids in the pews, like just sitting there chilling,
Right.
right?
Right.
At the courthouse steps. It was just us three, and then she got pregnant that following. So there's a lot of growth and maturation that I hadn't gone through, but now I'm doing this in front of my kids, and there are some things that I've identified in the beginning that I do not want to show to my youngest son. However, I think I get caught sometimes in the middle because maybe I'm doing too much to keep him from that part. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you bring up like where is that balance, right? And again, I don't think I was raised in like any form of an old school parenting way. Like I wasn't afraid of getting hit with a stick or a belt or anything like that. But I think I was still disciplined. And again, given the some of the research out there nowadays, there are things that were maybe questionable, not wrong, but
Right.
questionable in today's world. But yeah, how do I'm certainly not on board with all of the gentle parenting stuff. Some of
Right.
it, sure, but all of it, absolutely not.
Yeah, I think you have to be. It should be balanced parenting, right? Like
Yeah,
balanced parenting that doesn't do the extreme of either. Like I don't disagree with physical discipline, like a spanking or something like that. But
sure.
there's a level to spanking and then beating the shit out of your kids, right? Like there's a
Yeah,
totally big difference. Now, in
no
some
doubt.
communities, that line is blurred. You know what I mean? Like I can remember getting whooped with a switch or a coat hanger and stuff like that. Like, but that seemed normal because all of my black friends was getting whooped the exact same way. It wasn't until I
Right.
started, I found out I was smart and I was in classes with a whole bunch of white kids, and they were like, they weren't afraid to tell their parents that they got a bad grade or they did something stupid. I was like, ain't no way. I just won't go home. I remember in high school,
Right.
I got RPC'd in high school, and I got up that next morning. I caught the bus to school, and I basically walked around the neighborhoods around the school for one whole day. Actually, no, I'm lying. I actually left the house, waited for my dad to leave to go to work, and then I snuck back in the house and I slept underneath my bed for 6 hours. I stayed there for 6 hours till I knew he was about to come back. Then I jumped back out the window, came around the front, and came back in like I had come from school. And then the
This
next
was
day, still didn't tell him. I used a payphone and I called the front desk and told them that I couldn't come in because I was working, but everything, and I had a deep voice by then already, so we were straight. I checked myself back in, all because I was afraid to tell my dad that I had gotten in trouble, in any kind of trouble. So
right.
I think all of that plays a role in the parenting stuff. Like my oldest son, like he was afraid to come home. Like I distinctly remember in the third grade that he got like a B or something on a math test, and the school had to call to tell us to come get him because he refused to walk home.
Jeez. For a
Right,
B?
right now, like the person that sits in front of you right now, I look back and I'm like, ain't no way he was afraid like that, right?
Right.
But no, I can understand because he's also I was a different guy. I had
Yep.
some unresolved issues that from the Marine Corps that I refused to get checked. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, and I wrote this blog that kind of goes over the parenting types, and I tried to stress that there are no right ways; they're just different ways, and there are definitely responses that we should have depending on the situation, right? Like every situation in your kid's upbringing doesn't call for you to be an authoritative person, right? More of an authoritarian, meaning that we have rules and standards, and don't cross those lines. But everything under that line is up
Good.
for discussion, right? Like
Yep.
we can go back and forth, we can have those conversations. And I know a lot of fathers who they do not believe that you should be having these like inclusive conversations with your kids. So do you have these like sit down conversations with your sons, like all opinions matter type stuff where they can just kind of say how they feel or what they think, or are they kind of too young for those types of conversations? I know Adonis is now. Adonis is smart as hell.
Yeah, Rayden's too young, right? If I ask him for his opinion, we'll end up talking about
Jelly
hot dogs
beans.
and bologna sandwiches, right? But yeah, Adonis, I try to I try to let him have an open voice in a lot of things. Of course, there are certain things where, this is a rule and this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. And that's how it is. Um, But similar to, me giving validation to him being able to feel how he feels, he's allowed to express opinions and thoughts and ideas. And um, I don't know that he's old enough to have applicable opinions about how a household runs, but I'm certainly willing to hear him out and let him have a say. And should it be appropriate, then we can find a way to incorporate it if it's legitimate.
So how would that look for you? So like let's say Adonis comes back and he says, "You know what? I don't like that you do that you're I don't know, that you put me in my room for timeout." Like how would you handle that?
I actually do this. I ask him what he thinks his punishment should be.
Mm,
So if he does something wrong, if he breaks a rule so big enough that it now warrants some form of punishment, which is often taking away tablet or taking away YouTube or something like that, right? Not a killer one, but um, that's sort of my go-to. And I often open it up to, what do you think your punishment should be? More often than not, I'm met with, I don't know. But we actually did. We just had, funny, I had a good week to hop on your show, but um, had an issue, and we we had a fight about it, and we both calmed down. We sat down, and I said, how are we going to fix this together so it doesn't happen again?
mm,
And I think we finally gotten to a point where he knows I want to hear his thoughts. I don't want him to just say, I don't know.
right.
And so he said, I need to do these things better. And I said, I agree, you do. And if you don't, how am I supposed to handle it from my side? And his answer was to give him a reminder, which was the first time he's ever come up with any sort of, here's how you can help me do this. So as simple as that is, and as often as I do that, I agreed to it. Right? It's his own thought, and he came up with it by himself. And I said, okay, I can do that. I'll give you a reminder. And then I said, what if you don't? If you don't take that reminder and fix it? And then he said, then you can take my tablet away.
That's good. What's that squeaky noise
Yeah,
back there?
it's pretty.
That's a
The
dog.
the
That's your
dog.
dog.
Yes,
You got
yes.
rid of Odin and got another dog. I feel bad
Yeah,
for Odin.
Brandon.
Odin was cool, little ankle
I know.
licker.
Yeah, I feel bad for Ogun too. That was Miranda's call.
Mm. You win some, you lose some, man.
That's right.
I don't fight anything. That's why I still like. That's no one's taking mine away from me. Come here, man.
Yeah, you got Lena.
Up, up, up. Say what's up.
There we go. Yeah, that picture I sent you from a couple of years ago.
I know,
Her,
right? She look a
her and
lot different
Raiden.
now. She got like a little like little
Oh yeah.
haircut and everything. It's crazy now. That's cool, man. That's good, man. So I want to definitely let you know, man, that I'm super proud of you. You know what I mean?
Thanks.
I think we met right before Adonis was just born.
Yeah. Let's see. He wasn't even quite a year and a half.
Right. I'm super proud of you, man. I'm super
Thanks.
duper proud of you as a father and everything else. Definitely, definitely got some good dad traits. Mine is that dog
Yeah.
squeaking the toy in the
I
background.
don't know. Yeah.
We make
Uh,
we compensate for kids talking in the background, not dogs. Dogs got to be perfect like mine.
yeah, he's throwing around his fault. Hold on. I'll take it from him. All right. There's one. Yeah, I think the the benefit that I think I've had too is I've got a great dad, but also I have a really good stepfather
Right.
that um, you know I think has kind of helped just with a different perspective, right? And part of that perspective comes from him being a stepfather to me, which is not when I think when a biological father is present and in the picture consistently, the role of a stepfather is different, right? I think it's different if a stepfather comes in, there's no dad around, and now you just kind of assume that role. But he had to navigate, you know, a relationship with me while my dad was present and around. And, fortunately, my mom and my dad handled their divorce really well, at least with me in mind.
Hmm.
And my stepdad fit right into that as well. And um, always got along with my dad. I don't know if they ever had issues between the two of them. If they did, then I didn't know, which I think is, probably the best way to handle it. I didn't have
Absolutely.
any clue about any issues that there may have been. I don't think there were, but if there were, I didn't know. And so I think I have two really good examples of what a good father is, at least as it relates to me and my upbringing.
Yeah, because parenting is a tricky subject, right? There's so many variables to it. I mean, I'm extremely grateful for my stepdad as well, right? Like he showed me a side of fatherhood that I don't think I knew was also fatherhood, right? Like I definitely knew the strict, hard-nosed discipline, you do what I say and that is the only rule type deal. But I think my stepdad, Tony, he's been, and you know Tony as well, but Tony has been like, I wouldn't call him a friend, right? Because he's not my friend. Because I really do look at him. I call him pops. Like I really do look
Yeah.
at him like he's a father figure and has been a father in my life. But he bridged some of the miscommunication between the stuff that my father allowed me to do because although my dad was strict, hard nosed, don't cross him, everything else, like he didn't have a say, right? Like he didn't give a
Right.
shit as long as his rules were simple. Get good grades, that means A's and B's. And if you out past 10, don't come back here. That was his only
Right.
rule, right? So
Right.
wherever you at, if it's 10:01, you better stay where you at.
Right.
So I worked that system for 4 years, and I had a hell of a time doing so. So when
Yeah.
when I would go back to my mom's house, like during the summer times or the breaks, like I'm looking for that same freedom, and my mom is not having it. My mom is, you know, my mom is a little short firecracker. Want to know everywhere you are. She will embarrass you in the classroom, all of those things. And my stepdad was the one who actually like bridged those conversations, and he broke it down in a way that like an older brother would break it down, right? He's like, look, man, I know you have a lot of freedom. You could do whatever you want to, and that's cool. He says, but you have to know that no matter where you go in life, like you don't get the same privileges. It doesn't matter if you are at school. Like you can't just do whatever you want to at school. You can't do whatever you want to on the basketball court. You can't do anything that you want to in any area of your life. So you're going to have to learn how to navigate every place that you're going to go. And if you go to
Yeah.
a place that has a different set of rules, then you should be able to navigate that. And that stuck with me. That helped my
Yeah.
relationship with my mother. You know what I mean? So how has your stepdad, can I call him by name?
Yeah. Yeah.
How have Dave, Big Dave, my guy Dave, how has Dave helped you in that relationship? You know, because he has an outside perspective of what's going on with you, right? He has a one sided understanding as to what it's like dealing with your mom. And then he also has an aerial view of what goes on with your father, right? So like
Yeah.
how has he been instrumental in that?
Yeah. I think the first thing is, I don't think he never crossed a boundary with the relationship between me and my dad. Right. It
Right.
was there was a respect level there, probably from father to father, man to man, and my dad was kind of my go-to, and fortunately, I had a secondary one if I wanted another piece of advice or a different perspective or additional input or whatever it may be. The other piece is very similar to what you say. I think Dave was able to bridge a gap. My mom and I have a good relationship. I don't want that to be misconstrued, but um, we are very different. We have very different ideas. We have very different opinions, which is fine. I think we're both entitled to those. And as I've grown up, I think we've been able to express those in a much healthier way these
Right.
days. But there were times where my mom and I just weren't getting along because we didn't agree and didn't necessarily know how to communicate those things. And very similar to what you just said about your situation, Dave was able to bridge those gaps. I remember one specifically. We were sitting at dinner. I was a senior in high school, and I was playing football. I played football in high school, and Ron was talking about how she was tired of watching us lose because we played in the 4A, which at the time was the biggest school size in Nevada. And she wasn't wrong, and I knew that at the time. We shouldn't have been in the 4A. We should have been competing in the 3A. And after I graduated, ironically, my high school did move down to the 3A the year after I graduated. So we truly did belong there. But she made this comment that she was tired of watching us lose, and I blew up, and I started screaming at her about how, if you don't want to be there, then don't come. I don't even want you there anymore if you're
Dang.
just tired of watching us lose. Turned into this huge thing, and Dave essentially became the mediator. And I'm sure that he agreed with my mom. He was probably tired of going and watching me lose
Right, right,
games. I was tired of losing games. I was the one out there losing them.
right, right,
But he made the comment and the point that, from where I sit, I have to have the mindset that we're going to win. Because if I go out there and think, fuck, we're just going to lose, we're probably just going to lose anyway. There's no
right,
point even going out and competing. And so, yeah, he was able to sort of make that conversation better
right,
because he was able to relay my perspective to her. And I don't even think he attempted to give my mom's perspective to me. I knew it, right? I
right.
knew it, but he was able to kind of calm that. And I think it's like that a lot. I love my mom, but there are things about her. She wants everything perfectly clean. Or same thing, when I was in high school, she'd complain about my room, and I'm like, close the door if you don't want to see my dirty room. And yeah, again, it's a smart ass teenager response, right? I probably should have just cleaned my room. Again, in
Absolutely.
hindsight, being a little more grown up.
I wish one of my
But
kids would tell me close the door. I will empty that motherfucker so that the next time
right,
that you open it, it won't be shit in there and it will stay clean.
it'll be clean, right? But just little things like that. I think he was able to kind of be a voice of reason for the two of us.
Right.
So, and
Shout out to Dave.
yeah, he took on a role that, again, that kind of generation, I think, was the first where divorce was maybe more acceptable.
Right.
And they're navigating something that their parents didn't know anything about. So it's not like he or my mom or my dad could go ask their parents, hey, how do we deal with this blended family situation?
Right.
So they're really just doing the best they can too.
Right.
And I think, in terms of everything as a whole, I think the three of them succeeded at it pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. That blended family shit is crazy.
Mhm.
And like it's funny because like even my role in my oldest son's life is a little different than Dave's because I, for the most part, was his primary father. No disrespect to his biological father. And the hard part about that is you feel a void in a person's life, and it still isn't the void that he wants filled. You know what I mean? And I know your
Yeah.
situation isn't like that because you did have your dad, but for somebody like my oldest son, it wasn't. And then in the beginning of our relationship, I felt like there was a lot of, for lack of a better word, bitch assness in his biological father. So I would chastise him for being like that or what I perceive to be like that. And that happened for a few years, but I have always been open and honest to have these discussions with him to where, where I was able to, self-correct over the years. But like I try to make it a point to be the best daddy Gerald that I could be. Never wanted to be his dad, good, bad, or
Right.
indifferent, right? So if his dad didn't show up, that was essentially on his dad. If his dad decided to do something spectacular, then that was essentially on his dad. But I didn't want to get in the way of that. I wanted to carve out my own separate relationship with Dominic that was just me and him in whatever those roles are. And it started from jump. He used to just call me Gerald, and then we
Mhm.
had a conversation, and he felt like he was the only person in the group that didn't call me Daddy Jordan. It made him feel like he wasn't a part of the
Mhm.
tribe. So I was like, cool, we can fix that. I would not let him just call me dad because I'm not his biological dad, and I think that that role should be reserved for him and him alone. I'm 100% comfortable being whatever it was that I would be for him. So we came to the conclusion that he would call me Daddy Gerald. And on the flip
Right.
side of that, we did the exact same thing for my daughter with her stepdad, right? So we went from it, that was more of a respect thing. I'm like, she don't need to be calling any grown-ups by their first name. We need to figure out something different. She calls her stepdad Daddy Kevin, which is great. I tried to do this with Dominic and his stepmom. Stepmom wasn't going for it though.
Right.
She was like, nope, just call me by my first name, and that's all, and that's fine,
Right.
but I wanted to make sure that, because I think it is important that if you're going to take on that role, that your job is to just fill that role. You aren't the other person.
Right.
That period. You know, I had a stepdad way back when, before Tony, right,
Mm.
who essentially tried to do that to me. He said something. He was talking shit about my dad, actually. We were at dinner, and he says something about, along the lines that was, well, your dad ain't here. Hearing it now, as a grown up, I'm like, that's true. But at the time,
Yeah.
oh no. I was like,
Yep.
you don't know my mother effing daddy. I flipped the plates up off the table and everything. Oh, I was going in. I was going in on this dude. And I'm just like, at the time, the only thing that I could relate to was that I was wrong. But on this side, I understand that he crossed the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
He may not have known that that was a boundary, but he crossed the boundaries. And I can
Right.
understand how you can cross the boundaries too, because I've done that as well, right? Like, although I'm saying that I've stayed in my lane, I have definitely crossed the boundaries. I've definitely let it be known that, hey, I'm the one doing all this stuff. Like, your daddy ain't done nothing, right? Your daddy don't
Right.
even pay whatever, right? Like, but he shows up with an Xbox, and now he's the greatest person in the world. I was feeling some kind of way about that. You know what I mean? So I've definitely had to check my ego, check who I am as a person, and that's probably my relationship with my, for lack of a better words, and for clarity of this podcast, my stepson is the biggest catalyst for change that my youngest son now sees, because I
Right.
had to learn different things. I had to uphold my boundaries in regards to parenting that I just couldn't do with him, right? Even Amaya, right? Like, she has a whole nother house that she spends half the week with. We split time. So there's things that comes with her that I had to learn how to navigate and manage, right?
Yeah.
Like, in the parts of her that are like her mom are the parts that I just so happen to hate,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
If I loved them, we'd still be together. We are
Yeah.
clearly not. And those are the parts that I recognize in my daughter. So I would, for lack of a better words, I would punish her for being like her mom. And
Right.
now sitting on this end and listening to Amaya talk, I hear that her mom does something similar to that, in her opinion. So it's like, it's such a delicate balance to be able to navigate and be a stepfather to somebody without stepping on any toes or anything like that. So shout out to Dave for that, because Dave has his own kids as well, right? So he's
Yeah.
trying to
You got three. Yeah.
navigate all of this stuff. Parenting is difficult, right?
Hmm.
So what
Yeah.
have you learned from, like, you have Dave, you have your father. Do you have any relationships with, say, like, your grandparents or anything like that?
No, not. I mean, not really. So, I mean, yes, I did. I don't want to say that I didn't, but I grew up away from my biological grandparents. One set was in California, one was in Wyoming, Colorado, and so I didn't really see them very often. And it's actually one thing. I'll get back to the original point here, but it's one thing that I really appreciate more. I think about both my mom, Dave, and my dad now is that um, I see how much they love my kids, and I know that my grandparents love me the same way. I didn't have that perspective to be able to understand that
Right.
until I could see it from a different view. Um, and so, yes, I had a relationship, but I wouldn't say, at least with either of my grandfathers, my paternal grandfather died when I was really young. But with my maternal grandfather, I had a good relationship with him. I just don't know that it was any sort of parenting or father
Right.
guidance kind of relationship.
Right. It was more of a
But
like,
it was,
hey, little grandson, and
yeah,
then gotcha.
yeah. I mean, and again, it was good, but I just didn't, I never recognized it like that. But with respect to both my dad and my stepdad, I think both helped instill a really strong work ethic in me. Uh, from both sides and sort of different perspectives. But money management, my dad is fine with money management now, but there were things that he struggled with early in my life that I've been able to learn from, and that's not a bad thing, right? You can learn from things that somebody goes through that are tough. From the other side, I've learned really good money management from both my mom and my stepdad. Navigating difficult conversations. Both my dad and my stepdad have worked in my dad was a principal, a vice principal, so in an administrator role where he had to have difficult conversations with teachers, employees. Stepdad worked in HR, and so same thing. I often ask both of them for advice on, how should I handle this conversation I'm going to have with an employee, or really just how to navigate a lot of different difficult conversations. They just have to be work related. Also parenting stuff, right? I'll ask how they would handle different things that I got to deal with Adonis or with Raven. And a lot of the times, my dad's background in education comes in handy.
Right.
So navigating fatherhood as a parent of a child in school is really nice, really convenient to have somebody that worked in education that understands that system. Um, so sports, a lot of that came from my dad. I learned how to throw a baseball, or swing a baseball bat, throw a football, shoot a hoop. A lot of that stuff came from my
Yeah.
dad, and so I think I could pinpoint everything that I've learned and somehow attribute it back to one of those two.
That's awesome. And now you get to be the catalyst of what your sons learn and how they treat their kids. And hopefully it gets better and better and better and better and better.
Yeah.
So, you know, and switching gears just a little bit, what do you do for a living?
I work in management in the health, wellness, and fitness field.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
manage a team of coaches.
You manage a team of coaches, and your undergrad is in health science
Kinesiology,
or
yeah,
kinesiology.
bachelor of science, kinesiology, and health promotion, and then I actually have a minor in psychology too, which it's just a minor, but I think at minimum it's helped me to slow down and identify some things that are talking points instead of screaming points,
Hmm.
and be able to kind of dissect things first before being so reactive to things that my children do.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I think that being able to pause, or what they call emotional intelligence. Now I think there's so many buzzwords going on with parenting and stuff like that. I know you had mentioned it earlier. Some of it you can take with a grain of salt. The one thing that I believe that we need to teach all of our kids is resiliency, right? The
Mm-hmm.
ability to take a hit, get up, dust yourself off, recalibrate, and take another step. I think that's the part that we all need to teach our children, right?
Right.
In regards to, say, your profession, what do you believe is the most important aspect of your health and wellness as it relates to being a father? Like, what about that is important to you?
Oh,
Because I did say a
um,
few years ago on our trip to St. Louis that you had gotten sexy on me.
right. Yeah, I think I don't know. You could go either kind of the psychological, look good, feel good kind of cliche, or the actual science behind it, right? You take care of yourself, it's easier to get things done in the day. You have more energy. If you have a healthy diet, adequate amounts of water, then you feel good. You have more energy, and you're able to to play with your kids, even though they're telling you that you haven't played with them enough. Um, and I think just in general, it sets up the foundation for good habits for themselves, right? I
Mm,
would be really disappointed in myself if 20 years from now, Adonis is having issues with high blood pressure or
right.
cholesterol issues or diabetes issues because I wasn't the one that, at least by my own lifestyle, wasn't setting a good example for him. And I think obviously you've worked in the health field, so you have an understanding of this, but um, it's easy to not take care of yourself, particularly when you're trying to lead a family and you're trying to take care of everybody else. It's easy to forget about yourself. And so, even just for myself psychologically, that hour and a half a day where I get to work out, that's time where it's uninterrupted me time. I don't have to worry is the wrong word because it's not a worry, it's not a burden to be a father, but I don't have to stress about giving my time and attention to somebody else. It's my time to take care of me so that I can be the best version of myself for my children.
Oh, I like that. That's a bar. How active are you in teaching your kids the importance of health and wellness for themselves? Because I know
Not
that you both
overly.
of your kids are in sports. I know Adonis is not the sports guy, but Raiden definitely is. Right, Adonis
Yeah.
is probably going to be the guy, and you have both of this. I think that's the dopest part is that you're the mixture of both, and they are one side of you. So you have
Yeah.
Adonis, who's like the nerdy, read all the Harry
Yeah.
Potter books like you are, and then you have Raiden, who's like will run into a brick wall, offensive
Right.
tackle, defensive lineman.
Right.
Can't put him in basketball because
Yeah.
he doesn't have finesse yet.
No.
So,
No.
are you? Do you actively teach them the importance of health and wellness, or do you think that at this age it's just more about showing them or modeling this behavior, saying like this is what daddy does to take care of himself, and then just what involving them in the sports? Like, is that more of your
Yeah.
approach? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. Right now, I think it's just more of setting the example. Although I will say, both my kids are very familiar with common sources of protein. They can mostly identify what a carbohydrate is on their
Mm,
plate. They can mostly identify what a fat is. And so, again, Miranda's very supportive in this too. She's active. She's health conscious. So it's very easy for that example to be set. But nutritionally, they both have a pretty good understanding, particularly for a 7-year old and a 4-year old, respectively, of what a healthy plate looks like. They also, they get treats. I mean, we have candy in the house, so they'll have candy. It's not like I'm, dictator that there's no candy in the house or anything. But they're both pretty good about being mindful of those kind of things. In fact, there was one time, and it just kind of hit me. It hit me strong with this one because Miranda bought me some peanut M and M's, and I was standing at the bar eating peanut M and M's, and I asked Adonis if he wanted some, and he goes, "No, I'm not very hungry." And I'm like, "Why am I eating these? Because I'm not hungry either. I'm just eating them because I like them." But it's that sort of innocence of a child. Like, I'm not hungry. Why would I eat something? And
right,
so they're both, I think, more conscious of nutritional choices than most little kids are.
right.
And again, that's not to say they don't get treats. They certainly do.
Fair enough.
Raiden in particular.
Yeah, my youngest two, they are, and Dominic, mine not so much, but Dominic, Layla, and Gerald definitely some gym rats. They
Mm-hmm.
I know Gerald is, oh, like I'm proud of that little guy. Although I'm like, he if somebody was going to tell me that being lenient was bad, and then you get this guy, you'd be like, nah, it's not that bad, because
That's
he
not
is,
that bad.
because he takes it like he, trust me, don't, he gets on my nerves, my absolute last nerve, because he is confident enough to challenge everything I have to say, and I'm patient enough to walk through that. For the most part, I just get tired of it all the time. I'm just like, shut the hell up and leave me alone. Like, shut up.
Right.
Like, I don't give a shit. Leave me alone and just do what I
Right.
say. But I
Right.
set the precedent that we're gonna have the conversation, so the whys happen, and then 15 minutes later. But then there's some things that he just does. Like, we know we work out every day. So
Yeah.
that's it. There's nothing else. So now he's in here like, Dad, it's workout time. I need my workout. I
Yeah.
need my workout. So he's out there 4 or 5 times. He got hoop dreams. So hopefully that takes off. And he grew like 4 inches over the summer. You haven't seen him, but
I
yeah,
saw that picture
that
and you
kid
could
is
tell.
humongous now. So it's
Yeah.
like teaching health and wellness, I think, for the most part, for any adolescent, really, it's modeling, right? It's making that a part of their lives so that they can so that it just becomes a part. Like I remember when Julie and I first started having kids, we were telling everybody like when they go to college, when they go to college, when they go to college, and people would say stuff like, well, you don't know if they're going to go to college. And I was like,
Right.
well, that's not the debate. They're 4 and 5 right now. So, like, that doesn't really matter. But we're setting the precedent that college is on the freaking table. That's why we're talking
Right.
about it. And I'm through right now. We 3 for 3 for kids going to college right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like setting the precedent for what you want at an early age and then just going about your day as if it was normal. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's nothing abnormal about your kids eating healthier. They don't think twice about it. They don't have any stigmas around it and things like that. And I think that's important, right? It's
Yeah.
keeping the stigmas away from our kids. That shit is it gets difficult when they get older, bro. And I'm not trying to scare you, but
Oh,
once they,
absolutely.
because and the reason why is everybody's kids aren't raised by people who have the same values as you, and for
Right.
some reason, those kids love the other kids.
Right.
Right? There's all like I just want a group of little happy little sport kids that don't want to do anything crazy, but no, they not. They like to talk.
Right.
It's crazy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But yeah, I like so tell me what do you think, as we start to wrap up, what do you believe are the most important things that dads need to make sure that they are mindful of as they walk this fatherhood journey?
Um, I think maybe the biggest one would be that it's okay to show and also receive affection, right? Um, it doesn't have to be the tough love, never tell your sons that you love them kind of father figure, right? I mean, I tell my kids I love them every single day. I also try to tell them, try to remember, particularly if it's warranted, if they've done something to earn it, to tell them that I'm proud of them. So
Right.
expressing feelings is fine. It's normal. It's okay. And we may be moving away from this as they, particularly as my kids grow up, but there used to be this, men don't have feelings. Even as I was growing up, right? Men weren't supposed to cry. Men weren't supposed to have feelings.
Right.
You're
Right.
supposed to be these stoic figures. And I think there's less of that. But I don't ever want my kids to feel like they're not allowed to have feelings. Obviously, I alluded to this before. I try to give life to their feelings. You feel a certain way, and that's okay. You want to talk about it? If they don't, that's fine. If they do, then that's great too. But it's okay to have these feelings, and it's
Mm,
okay to not be a manly man 100% of the time. Um, Adonis is very emotional and cries a lot, and I don't handle crying really that well,
I understand.
but I've gotten better with it because of him. And the only thing that I tell him is there a reason to cry? Are you hurt? Are you sad? Are you angry? Is there some sort of feeling that is driving that? And it's okay to feel those ways, and it's okay to cry because of that. More often than not, he's crying for no reason. I'm telling him to stop crying because there's not a reason to cry. But but that's the biggest thing there.
Yeah, you
So I
can't have
think
Skittles before dinner. So go sit
exactly.
down somewhere and cry your heart out.
Some for real, it's
Right?
something
Like
like that.
shut your ass up.
But no, I think I try to. I think telling your kids that you love them. It's funny because my dad tells me he loves me even to this
Every
day, every
day.
single day, every single day.
Every day.
My
He even call
mom,
he'll call
yeah,
and at the same time every night.
yeah,
Like I
my mom,
100% that is in my back pocket. I do the same thing to my sons, my
yeah,
kids that don't live here. It's not as frequent, it's not every night, but I definitely seen. I like when I recognized that he did that.
Yeah,
Like the day that I recognized that he did that, and then one day I was over there and he had called and you had rolled your eyes, and I kind of got on your case a little bit about it. I was
yeah.
like, dude, like
No, and I
I
know,
talked to my
and
dad stopped by the house today, and that's the first time I seen my dad since like Father's Day. I will talk to him since Father's Day.
right,
Like I text him a
yeah,
couple times about something that was going on at the property, some chicken eggs, some goats or something like that. But I hadn't like talked to him, and even when he stopped by, like he was here 7 minutes, long enough for him to drop off 3 dozen eggs, me to give him a black cup of coffee, him to down
right,
it, give Layla a hug, tell me 2 stories about when she was smaller that he remembered, and then he got up out of here.
right. Yeah. No, and I agree with you. I appreciate it, and even at the end of a long day, it's the same thing. I try to be mindful that it's something to appreciate and be thankful for. But the ironic thing is, my dad will tell me that he'll call me every day and tell me he loves me every day. My mom won't. Like I talk to my mom maybe once a week, and I could probably count on one hand, how many times she's told me she loves me in the last year. And that's not a bad thing, right? I
No,
got these different perspectives because my dad says it every day and I know he means it every time. But when my mom says it, it makes me pause and think, oh, she told me she loved me.
got you.
But these are just different
No,
parenting
no, I
styles than what
totally
I
understand
have.
that because it's funny because
Uh,
I can remember even my own father. I remember him telling me he loved me like maybe 10 times in my life.
right.
4 of them he was drunk.
Okay.
6 of them he was old. Right.
Right. Right.
So it's like I totally understand. So if he does say it, like it does, it's like
It,
whoa, right? Like I
yeah.
say I love you so much to these kids that they almost expect it to where like if they walk off and I don't say it, they like come back like what the hell's going on? Like
Right.
hello, I'm about to
It,
go upstairs now. I'm going to bed. Good night,
right.
love you. All right, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like it's always like I think I we kind of alluded to that in a little while ago, right? Like the balance between is it too much? Like I don't believe that there's too much I love you to a child, right? But
Yeah.
like where's the balance, right? Like there's a appreciation for your father doing it because he does it every
Yeah.
day. And then there's an
Yep.
appreciation for your mother doing it because she doesn't,
Mm, right.
right?
Yeah. And so same thing, just what you said, right? If you don't say it to your kids though, they take notice. And so I don't think that either way they're going to notice, right? Whether it's an everyday routine or everyday habit and you stop or you forget or you don't do it, they take notice of that. Or like from my mom's side or from your dad's side, they say it and you go, "Oh,
Right.
they mean it."
Right.
So I don't think either way is wrong, but I think the whole point of that is I try to make sure that my kids know how I feel about them, and
Yes.
and that from either side, right? From the good, I'm proud of you, or I'm disappointed in you,
Right.
and there's another thing that I've tried to shift is I'm not disappointed in you, the child, you, the person. I'm
Just you the
disappointed
action.
in this action
Absolutely.
that you did,
You sound like church people now. It's not I don't I hate the sin, not the person.
right?
But yeah, I think you're right in that. Like I think in regards to feelings and sharing your feelings as a father, I think there's so much of like this honing in on we're men and we don't need to share our feelings. And that's not necessarily
Right.
what we're saying because every single time that you yell at that child or you scream at that child, you're also expressing how you feel, right? So
Yeah.
what we're saying is express both of them. Like if you're going to
Yeah.
yell, then you also better tell them you love them, right? So
Right.
that there's a balance because the balance actually comes from your consistency, right?
Mhm.
So if you set the precedent that you're going to yell, you should also set the precedent that you're going to reward. And forget what the blogs are saying, right? We all have to overcome something and we all need to learn how to overcome something. And most people's problems are because how they learn to cope and manage those problems no longer work once they move to another area of life. So what I'm teaching and this is the reason why I believe being resilient is so important is because what I am teaching my children right now, if I was to teach them specifics, may not even be applicable when they get my age,
Yeah.
right? Like that, their world might be completely different. So the only thing that I can really teach them is say, hey, here's how you manage today. But as soon as this doesn't work, we have to be a little quicker on how we
Right.
get to the next thing. We can't be, 6 months down because a girl decided that I was no longer her flavor of the week, right? Like,
Right.
speaking to some of my older kids, right? Like, we can't just shut it down for 6 or 7 months. We have to learn how to process through those things. And my hopes is that by creating safety in the home and allowing those kids as they grow up to feel confident and safe to express how they feel, whether that is it's applicable or not. I think having the safety to be able to express it and the wherewithal to be able to navigate it to its completion, right? Like I can
Right.
feel however I want to, but I'm not allowed to just generate a whole bunch of shit based off of how I feel, right? Like
Right.
I'm able to feel how I feel, but I shouldn't be taking how I feel and turning that into actions, turning that into disrespect, turning that into all of these things, because that can be detrimental. And those are terrible coping mechanisms when you're 35 years old navigating the world. You can't be this soft, sensitive guy. And when we say that, we're not saying because you are emotional. We're saying that because you don't know how to control your emotions. That's what makes you
Right.
soft. You're soft.
Yeah.
You don't have thick skin. You can't process that information and go to the next stop. Not saying that it doesn't take time, right? But you still have to be able to do that. And there are a lot of dads out here trying to be the best dads that they can, and they have not been able to process the things that have mattered to them when they were children. So now they're trying to like overcorrect and turn into all of our children into these like entitled, soft. I don't want to call them soft like that because I feel like that's nah. I think they're soft because we're making them soft because we're overcorrecting, right? What we
Right.
need is both.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, that yeah, I'm 100% in on your resiliency piece. I think the accountability piece is another thing
Mm,
that I want to instill and teach my children. And you had a you had a Facebook post that I commented on a couple weeks ago, and it was I don't remember what your post was, but I know that I commented and spoke to, there being an opportunity to apologize
right.
and to take accountability and to make a commitment to doing better moving forward.
Yeah. The post said,
And
it said the hardest thing about parenting is that you only learn the correct thing to do after you've already done the wrong thing, and the new
yep,
thing that you just learned isn't applicable to any other kid.
to the next one. Right. Yeah. But and that's something, particularly as I've grown into my 30s and become more patient. And that's
30s.
part of raising Adonis, and then also having Raiden as the second
Right.
experiment where I get a chance to do things better. But I do I try to make sure that I'm accountable to anytime I overreact or I react in a way that wasn't warranted, and I've apologized to both of them for whatever kind of behavior came from any sort of circumstance if I was truly out of line. So I make sure that I verbalize an apology so they know it's okay to apologize.
100%.
Because for some people, even me sometimes, right? It's hard to apologize. It's hard to admit when you're wrong, especially if we get into something being wrong that was deeply or rooted deeply in some sort of belief. But it can be hard to apologize. So I try to set the precedence and the example that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to apologize. And then I try to set the commitment that this is what I'm going to do to be better for you if this comes up again. And so, there's a piece of accountability with that too. And I think those are important things to build a foundation for as they continue to grow.
Absolutely. I'm a big apologizer as well. I mean, I think I apologize too much sometimes to the point where, like, I think I had a conversation with my daughter and she was like, stop apologizing, just stop doing it.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right,
Like,
right.
just stop
Yeah,
doing it. But I actually apologized to my son a few weeks ago. I yelled at him because he was playing around doing something that I didn't I did not want him to do. I wanted him to do something else, and he just kept doing the thing, and I yelled at him pretty bad to the point where I
Yeah.
was like, I had to call him back in and was like, hey man, I don't like yelling at you,
Yep.
right? Because I think that's a part of it too. It's like there's different ways to apologize because I'm not apologizing for yelling at you. I'm apologizing because I think I yelled at you a little too far, right?
Right.
I said I don't like yelling at you, and I like the relationship that we have and the openness of it. But if I can't get you to come down from that, then I have to end all of it. You know what I mean? Like that means we
Yeah.
cannot communicate like that, and we have to go back to these are the rules, and this is what you do when I say something, and that's how it is. Because I can't, I don't trust that I can say to you, "Hey, I'm being for real," and then you can snap in. So we had
Right.
to have that conversation. I said because I really don't like yelling at you. I said you
Hmm.
my guy, and he goes, "I understand you my guy too," and then we were able to move on from there. So I think apologies, like I think some dads get kind of wrapped up in this apologizing thing as if kids don't deserve to be apologized to. Like these are people. Like you're
Yeah.
raising little people. Just like you can sit there and can count on your hands how many times something didn't happen for you, so do your kids. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And they're not going to like everything that you've done, and they shouldn't,
Right.
right? Like I had a conversation with Dominic and we were just kind of chatting back and forth. And he had said, like, I want to be this type of guy. When I have kids, I want to be like this. He's like, and all due respect, there's some things that you did that I would never do. And I'm like, I
Right.
understand.
Hmm.
There's some things that I've done that I would never do too, right?
Right.
But there's also some things that I've done that I'm proud of that he also would never do. You know what I mean? And I'm
Right.
okay with that as well. I just
Yeah.
want these kids to be confident to make decisions for themselves. And I think sometimes with parenting, and one thing that I struggle with in regards to the parenting thing is like, especially as they've gotten older, and you alluded to kind of how you felt about your father, right? Is that like they don't want to disappoint me, but sometimes that gets in the way. You know what I mean? Like they don't take some risks, they don't take certain steps, they don't do certain things because that thing is hanging over them. And sometimes that is a direct reflection of what I believe being a good father is, right? Like
Right.
that is the downfall of that. And I think I wrote that in one of my blogs about parenting styles. It's like it creates this like hero worshiping that kind of happens. And I don't want my kids to feel like they have to live up to me. That's why I tell my kids every morning for the most part, if I get an opportunity to, I tell them be great, and I tell them, oh, I hate that fucking thumbs up thing. I tell them to be great, and then I ask them, how do you be great? And the answer is to be yourself. The only
Right.
way. Don't be like me. I told Joe the other day. I said, don't be like me because you could never. I'm too good at it. I'm too good
Right.
at
Too
it.
good at being
And they
you.
don't need another one of me. They need one of you. So
Right.
it's always, it's always those little fine details. And I encourage every father out there to find their own little fine details. Pay attention to your kids because they'll be the ones to kind of tell you what they need from you and the style. Just like you have two totally different kids. One needs something that you aren't as natural with, and one needs something from you that you are very natural at. And it's the one that is going to stretch your parenting that's going to give you the most rewards on the back end. Not that the other one won't. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's definitely going to change you in that regard. I said the same thing about my oldest son. Even Layla to a degree. She definitely is verbal, and I appreciate it actually. You know what I
Right.
mean? Don't be
Right.
afraid to speak
Yeah.
out. I hope she never loses that as she takes this next step in her life. Never silence yourself. Continue to say the things that you feel, that you believe, because people will respect you for it. So, Ben, I appreciate you, man, for jumping on to the show,
I
giving
appreciate you
us
too.
your 2 cents. We'll put all of the things that we discussed in the show notes. But yeah, man, I really appreciate it. Man, we got to do this again and talk more about the health and wellness side because I know you do a whole lot of stuff, but we'll hold that off until I can get some like discounts for the dads or something.
Okay, hold on. I got one for you.
All right.
As I'm sure you know, navigating parenthood, this will make you a little bit sad too. Adonis, you know his best friends list when we go to bed because you've made it a few times.
Yes, I have.
He told me he was too old for that anymore.
Oh, damn.
So best friends list is no more, and I finished the night by telling him I love him and that he's my best friend. And the most I get back is, "You're my best friend." That's it.
That's it. Well, that's good.
That's it.
I've made that list quite a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Never got higher than like three. I
I
think.
think four.
No, I made three when he was really, really, really little, and I had just left.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
was fresh on his mind. I was three
Yep.
after your mom, your dad. Once rating
I was
came, I
proud.
had never
No,
gotten.
it must have been me, Miranda, and then you that
Yeah, I
night.
think that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then once rating came, rating was three, and I
Yeah.
never got past 4 or 5 after that. And I've only made the
Yeah.
list maybe like 10 times.
Yeah. Well, there's no more lists, so
Speaking of,
it's all
I got
right.
a video of it. I got a video that you sent me on my phone. I'm gonna have to post that one along with this.
Yeah. 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 Thanks for having me, Gerald. Always good to catch up with you. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate our friendship, man, and take care.